I'd like to call the regular meeting of the Destin City Council, August 5th, 2019.
Where you're at.
At 6 a.m., get my mind out of the Gulf of Mexico. To order. First up, we'll have an invocation by Pastor Logan Landis, Grace Lutheran Church. Pastor? Is the agenda approval, and I would like to add under my item 7H, Mayor Jarvis, I'd like to add the beach service discussion. We've had some emails this week, and I think there'll be some people here speaking on the during public comment, and during that portion, we'll just bring it up and have a discussion about the beach service and our vehicles on the beach ordinance. Is any other changes?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Unanimous, so moved. All right, next up, 1A, approval of the minutes of July 17th, 2019.
I'll make that motion, Mayor. Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none? So moved. Item 1B, approval of the minutes of the July 8th, 2019 budget workshop.
I'll certainly make that motion too.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. And item 1C, approval of the minutes of June 3rd, 2019 regular city council meeting.
Let's go for 3.
Thank you,
I'll
sir.
make the motion.
Thank you, ma'am. Seeing no further discussion? Thank you, sir. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Up next, we'll have a presentation, AT&T, by Mr. Tim Hawkins. Sir?
So thanks for having me. Tim Hawkins with AT&T, and I just have a little PowerPoint to show, and then we can get into more specifics of kind of where we're putting the small cells, what they're going to look like, that sort of thing. That's just a cover page. All right, so there's just 2 short videos that will probably do a better job explaining this than I will. So I think they're each 2 minutes. One's pretty AT&T branded, and then the other one is just kind of a CTIA.
I'm Veronica Bloodworth, and I'm Senior Vice President of Construction and Engineering at AT&T. I lead a team of about 22,000 professionals. There are engineers and technicians out there who basically build the wireline and wireless networks for all of AT&T. We're also out there building it for autonomous cars, for drone deliveries, for virtual reality, any technology that's going to rely heavily on mobile networks. So we have teams of people across the nation working in all types of environments to get that network equipment deployed and to ensure our customers stay connected wherever they live, work, or play, whether that's the extreme heat of Death Valley to the rural areas of Alaska to 5,000 feet above sea level in the Colorado mountaintops. You can almost bet anywhere you go in this country, an AT&T technician has been there ahead of you. AT&T invests more than any other publicly traded company, about $20 billion a year. And for us, that means everything from advanced technologies like software-defined networks to shovels in the ground to build one of the largest fiber networks in the world. And I'll just say AT&T has been building and maintaining networks for over 100 years, and we are hands down one of the best in the world at it. We also make sure our customers stay connected during big events. Big events are unique in that it draws thousands of people to a very small geographic area. So we spend months planning and deploying cell sites on wheels and distributed antenna systems to these big events to ensure that our customers have the best experience they can have while they're attending whatever event that is, if it's a concert or it's Coachella or a big game. Small cells play a big role in densifying our network, which means we're bringing connection points closer to our customers, which is important as we lay the foundation for 5G. Small cells are a very innovative technology, ideal for bolstering coverage and capacity in areas that would be very difficult for us to reach with a macro site. When we talk about building out our next generation network technologies, it's important to remember that we're actually out there building it from the ground up. We're in suburban neighborhoods, we're in rural areas, we're in the urban cities, actually out there laying the fiber, installing the small cells, and increasing the capacity on our macro sites. We're taking what's on paper and we're bringing it to life.
There's one more, it's a little bit shorter than that, but it's about 5G.
Do you ever think about how information shows up on your phone or tablet? Probably not. That's because network providers are constantly designing, building, and improving mobile networks so that you can do everything you want to do, wherever you want to do it. In fact, nothing about your connectivity happens by chance. It takes precise planning and many component parts, like cell towers and small cells, to deliver the wireless experience you want and expect. Over the past several years, each generation of the mobile network has been faster, allowing us to do more on our devices. The next generation of mobile networks, 5G, will build upon existing infrastructure to be even smarter, faster, and more powerful. 5G will be much faster, but that's not all. 5G will be a game changer because of something called ultra-low latency. Latency impacts things like the time between pressing play and seeing a video start to stream. On tomorrow's 5G networks, there will be next to no lag time. That means data flashes over the network faster than the blink of an eye, literally. That means less of this and more of this. As networks continue to evolve, we will be able to do things wirelessly that we can't even imagine today. Reducing airport delays and increasing highway capacity while reducing pollution and saving you time and resources. World-class healthcare will be more accessible thanks to advances in telemedicine, like video doctor visits for routine issues in rural areas. Self-driving cars will traverse highways and navigate smart cities. Smart cities will become smarter, improving traffic flow, identifying leaking pipes, speeding emergency services, supporting education, and leveraging resources more efficiently to meet budget challenges. Virtual reality will become commonplace, taking us places we could never go before. Public safety will be able to work together to find missing children using smart cameras and artificial intelligence. All of this and more will be possible with advanced mobile networks. Network providers are getting ready for this future today by deploying small cells and investing in new infrastructure, and for good reason. The Internet of Things is about to explode, with 50 billion devices expected to be connected by 2020. We need mobile networks with massive capabilities to handle the data that will travel to and from all those devices. So what needs to happen to be ready for this mobile future? Cities and network providers need to work together so that consumers have mobile networks that can deliver more, better, faster connectivity. Around the world and across the country, communities are laying the groundwork for the 5G future that will be here before we know it. Will we be ready?
All right, so this, let's see. This is just a chart of how data is just, gone way up since 2007. A lot of these slides are just covered in those videos. So I'll probably just skip some and get more to the localized, what we're doing here. It's just a different type of cell towers. Right now, what we're putting up is a small cell in the middle that has LTE, and then we'll come back probably in the next year or two and add an additional radio to that, which that'll make it 5G. That's what they just showed on the video. Here's some pictures of some in other cities. The next slide, I have some that we've built in Destin. So that's 2 sites that we've built here already. Just how many people we hire in the state of Florida. And I could send this to you guys if you want to see it. Here, so here's probably what you want to see. Here, this is the west side of Destin, and this is our build plan for the city of Destin right now. There's 39 sites. 31 of the 39 we have at 30 feet, and then 8 are at 37 feet. So if you look at the different colored dots, the red is the planned sites. The yellow sites we have built, they just don't have power and fiber delivered to them yet. And then there's green sites that are on the air taking traffic right now. So the only 2 that are taking traffic right now are on the bottom and the southwest corner of that picture. And then here's the east side of town. So this morning I pulled the data usage just to see why we need to build these here. This is the data usage. We only had 2 sites on the air for all of July. This is the data usage just on those sites for July. And it came out to almost 10 terabytes of data transferred just on 2 small cells. I mean, unbelievable. So the left side was like the first 2 weeks of the month. The right side was the second 2 weeks. That's really it. I'm sure we have some questions.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your presentation. I had a question. Your towers, are they exclusive to AT&T, or will other carriers be able to utilize?
The frequencies that they broadcast are licensed to us, so we own them. So they are exclusive. They are exclusive to us.
Okay.
If another carrier wanted to put an antenna on it, we would be open to that. But
At the
way we're
present time,
building
it's just strictly for AT&T.
That's right.
Thank you.
Mr. Marler.
Thank you. Couple of things I needed to hit you with. Okay, it's no secret who I work for around here, but just in case anybody doesn't know, I work at the Emerald Grand Harbor Walk Village. And last year, I believe, your company had put towers, had been paid to have towers put on top of the Harbor Walk or on the Emerald Grand.
Right.
Also, you put one of the small cell poles, which doesn't have power, at the corner of the property. And then also you have one at Village Baptist Church, which is a flagpole. Mm-hmm. The question, the main issue that I have is, now I know the one, to possibly answer Councilman Mitchell's question, the church was told that once everything was up, that they would be able to add other things to it, if the other things like microwaves or whatever, or different carriers and things. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure about that because I'm just going by what one of the church members told me. But the main issue that I have was when the small cell pole was put up, even though it was in the city right of way, the Emerald Grand Harbor Walk Village was not notified, and none of the property owners and several other property owners approached me, and they were not notified because they were not exactly happy where it was located. Mm-hmm. Because I think in the case of Harbor Walk, it's located right by our reader sign, and there was an issue where nobody knew, and nobody knew what it was coming in, and so I would like to make sure that whatever ones you still install here, I think we just need to make sure the property owners have a little say-so, because we're just not happy where it's placed, or at least my employers aren't happy where it's placed, but it's there, so we're stuck with it.
We'll do that going forward.
Okay.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. I remember a few years ago, y'all had installed a tower over across from James Lee Park in a neighborhood, I believe, and there was an issue with having to move it and try to put it elsewhere. At the time, you had said it was clearly an emergency effort because of the quality of service, or the lack thereof, in the area. I know, as a former customer of AT&T that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but at the time, and what my question is if this is still the current status, that there were 2 towers that y'all use essentially in Destin that we can bounce off. And that historically there has been a problem with one of the 2 towers, so we've been limited to all cell phone traffic coming from one tower, and there's not an adequate amount of, I don't think bandwidth is the right terminology, but there's not
Capacity
enough
probably would be the
capacity to support the locals as well as the tourists. I'm wondering if y'all have addressed that by doing additional, I know you tried to do the village one.
Right.
How is that problem? Because it's a continuing problem, and I know that many homes, especially the Indian Bayou neighborhood, they can't even get cell service in their own homes. So how are you working to address those issues?
Right. I'm Indian Bayou, that's the neighborhood on the north side of this, is that right?
Right where we are right now.
So this is the plan for fixing that. The small cells are the plan for relieving capacity from the macro sites. And right now we have 3 that I'm aware of. One at Harbor Walk, one on Matthew Boulevard, and then one in front at the church.
And have y'all noticed any results in terms of complaints and increased capacity?
In this slide, 10 terabytes of traffic in July we took off of our macro sites. So, and that's just for 2 sites. We have many more to build.
It's everybody relieved that they can use their phones, right?
Right, for sure.
So tell me about your towers, because it leads me to another question, which is Verizon and T-Mobile, whomever else provides cell phone service now. Do they have to have their own towers, or are y'all all sort of in partnerships where you can share towers? Because I certainly don't want to see, I want people to have service, but I don't want to have a tower on every corner either.
We have partnered with them on small cells, but these that we're building are strictly for us right now. But we have in some areas partnered with them. They would have to put a separate antenna on it.
What's the timeline on the
this?
different colored dots? Yeah. The green ones, we know they're operational. What's the timeline on the yellows and the reds?
So the yellows will probably all be on the air in the next month is our plan. And then the red, I believe we have most of those red in permitting right now. So probably on the air in the next 120 days.
And you're done?
But
Then you're done
for the
for
foreseeable
Destin?
future, yeah. This is all we have. I mean, this is everything right now.
When you go with the 5G, what type of antenna in addition to what you have will you be putting on those poles?
Right now, let me see if I have a picture of it. So if we were to put it on this site, the way it is right now is it's an antenna that just kind of sits right up underneath the antenna that's at the top of that pole, and it just sandwiches the pole right underneath that. So it just looks like a little bit taller version of that antenna.
Any further questions from the council? Seeing none? Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I just might add, we're asking AT&T, it's me over here, Michael Burgess sitting at the table. We're asking AT&T to put street lights on many of these small cells as they go up, where we kind of have a shortage on street lights, and they've accommodated us in that request. I think to date we've permitted 14.
Based on that question, can you tell us how many of those poles he's going to actually have? How many total lights?
Not yet. Just the ones we reviewed so far, it's probably 90% that we're asking them to place street lights on.
So they'll go back and install the lights?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Coordinated with Gulf Power or Next Era?
That has been coordinated only with AT&T. I believe they're picking up the bill for those street lights. And in places where there are a lot of wooden poles, we're asking them to place the small cells on wooden poles to kind of match the neighborhood aesthetic instead of the shiny black fixtures that they have in other places.
But Gulf Power is okay with this, is where I'm going. Well, if it's the power poles, right?
No, they're on their own independent pole.
Okay, but if we're putting street lights in, Do you see the connection? What am I missing then? Because if we're putting in a street light, or putting these on a street light, you've got to be coordinating with power company, right?
So both of these right here, for example, there wasn't a pole there. We set that pole, and then all of our poles, they have like a slot right underneath the antenna that we can attach a light arm to, and that's what we're doing. So it's our pole. We're not putting them on the power companies.
Okay.
They have a meter on on the pole in front of Harbor Walk that has not been hooked up yet. So they would be paying the power bill for it too.
There's one right there.
Question.
Top left, right?
Yep.
That's the other question. Will you be paying for the electricity for the light, or is the city paying for that?
No, it's us. It's all through our meter.
I'm sorry?
It's all metered and billed to us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any further discussion? If not, we'll press on. Got a lot to cover tonight. Thank you, sir. At this time, we'll go right into item number 3, which is public comments on agenda items that are not public hearings and any other matter not on the agenda. And we'll begin. I got 3 yellow cards, so we'll call out the yellow cards first. And then after that, I'll just look out, and if anybody that's in the audience would like to pile on, they're more than welcome. I just want to remind everyone, when you come up to the podium, press the red button and say your name and your address for the public record, and you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments. First up will be Joanne Hall.
Sorry. Okay, I'm Joanne. I'd like to speak about the construction behind Winn-Dixie. That's one thing. I'm the lucky lottery pick of 2001 Cordgrass Court within 100 feet of an active construction site. I have lots of videos I could show you. I have lots of audio you could hear. Why I am here is for this construction noise limitation, 14-56. And it reads, construction or demolition activities other than placement of concrete as described in subsection 13, for which the city has issued a development permit provided such activity occurs between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. The question is, what days of the week? We're questioning that I have 100 neighborhood signatures. So I have 100 people with me that don't want the construction on Sunday. And the Reverend gave a benediction, and I believe he said we were entitled to happiness, enjoyment. And so I'd like for it to be clarified for us if we're entitled to Sunday.
Okay,
I don't know that.
Ms. Kopp, is it possible to have you reach out to the actual group that is constructing the building and find out if we can get compliance from them for no weekend activity first before we start legislating on top of them?
Sure, we'll have a conversation with them.
I'd like to get you
May I
relief as
ask why
fast
it's
as
up
we
to them? Because
it could be faster if they say sure.
yes,
That's my goal.
I've spoken with them, and also in addition to that, they have a 3 a.m. permit. 3 a.m. Placement of concrete associated with non-residential development activities for which the city of Destin has issued a development permit when conducted between 3 a.m. and 10 p.m. So what I now have is a 5-hour window for sleep, 7 days a week. I don't think that's adequate. That's if you can fall asleep between those time zones. When I have been in touch with the TDK construction, and their reasoning for having to pour that construction at 3 a.m. is because the temperature. Because I was wondering if they have to light it up, and I know that you have to have things that shake the ground to get the air bubbles out of the cement, so there's going to be ground shaking. And we're already experiencing ground shaking. It's like mini earthquakes in the house. So we're going to light it up, we're going to shake the ground, and we're going to do it at 3 a.m. When I was wondering why 3, why can't we just wait for the natural sun to come up at 7? but evidently it has to do with the temperature. Now, my question is it ground temperature? What is it? Because those temperatures will eventually come. They don't have to be at 3 a.m. It might be 2 more weeks when the temperatures go down to those temperatures at 7 in the morning, which is a reasonable, not reasonable, but that's the rule. 3 a.m. in your backyard, it's in my backyard, lit up with things shaking the ground.
So Ms.
You
Hoff,
just can't
I think-
imagine. You just can't imagine. It's torture.
No, I can have a pretty good imagination. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this as an item for discussion under my topic at the next meeting. In between then and now, I can't do anything faster than that, but I know that I'm going to have our city land use attorney reach out so that we can get you relief hopefully within the next 2 weeks. And if we can't, then we will move forward with whatever remedies we have available, because I take it seriously and I understand your
I've
stress.
tried to reach out to TDK, and I'm being, it isn't pleasant. And when I questioned them about where the traffic would go and about people going there, they sent me memes of shopping carts. So I don't think they're very serious about the neighbors. And the neighbors did not get this. I'm within 100 feet of the house, so I don't even know if I was supposed to get this. Nobody seems to be aware. I don't think this construction company really cares. I think it's all about them and not about us. So do they have to say?
I would just say I'm not going to speak to the construction company. I'm going to speak.
Who am I talking to?
I'm behind you.
Oh, okay.
Nope.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay, so I'm not going to speak with the construction company. I'm going to speak with the attorney for the property owner who controls the construction company. Okay?
Yes, because, like I said, my pictures are falling off my walls. My house is shaking. And a 3 a.m. pour you're literally in my backyard. It really is. I'm that house. And when I go around the corner, they're exposed as well. And because they're at a different angle, they're not being notified. So nobody
Thank you
knew
for
this.
letting us know. I'm going to give them a call first thing tomorrow. Okay?
Thank you,
What was your
Joanne.
name?
Come over here when you're done. Okay.
Thank you.
Could she give us the location, the address? I didn't catch that if she said it.
to be behind.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Next up, Alex Metz.
Mayor, I have a question. Mayor?
Yeah, oh,
I have a question.
hold on just a second, Alex.
Ms. Hogg?
Where is,
Go ahead,
basically
Rodney.
for our city staff, where is it that we allow a construction company to have a permit or to work at 3 o'clock in the morning? Is that in our LDC or comp plan, or where is that?
We do allow it, and I'll let Noel, our building official, respond.
Thanks.
Yes, it's in our noise ordinance, section 15 dash, I'm not real sure, but it states that, pretty much what she read verbatim, that you can place concrete starting at 3 o'clock in the morning. That's the only exemption, is the placement of concrete that early in the morning. Otherwise, the construction times are from 7 to 10, normal construction hours. And it doesn't specify certain days of the week. It just says, it doesn't go into only Monday through Friday or, excluding Sundays. It doesn't give that at all. It's just construction daily, 7 to 10, with the exception of.
I mean, that may be something we need to look at in
Yeah.
our noise ordinance.
Correct, yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
standard
it is.
language, like across Florida, or is that just something
I
the
can't,
city did?
yeah, I can't speak for other municipalities on that. I just know it's our current Destin ordinance.
So Jeff Burns was the drafter of that ordinance, and I helped him draft the ordinance. I believe we did use templates from across the state, but if it's something the council would like to legislate and change, of course, that'd be a pretty simple fix. So,
I'm sure most of the time, it's not day after day, night after night after night. It all depends on the project, Lots of times, I'm sure they pour concrete in a more residential area, maybe once, not 9 nights in a row. That's a pretty big project, so I'm sure they're pouring.
Well, they'd have to do
Especially
the
during the heat of
foundation
summer.
and the walls
Right.
and everything.
Yeah, so it's definitely something we probably weren't aware of till just now. I wasn't. So we'll let our staff and city attorney address it first before we have to address it later. Hopefully we won't. All right, next. Did I call you Alex? Yep.
Do you want me to wait till it's on your agenda, or?
Well, no, just go ahead and lay it on out, and that way everyone will have time to chew on it during the course of the meeting, and then I'll bring it back up during my portion of the meeting, all right?
My name is Alex Mez of 209 Norwood Drive. I just came here tonight to address a couple discrepancies we have in Ordinance 18-15-LC, which is the vehicles on the beach, basically concerning beach vendors. I provided a timeline via email, but I have a hard copy if anybody wants it, of kind of the back and forth we've gone through. The latest is that on April 15th was the reintroduction of the ordinance. Ms. Ramswell made a motion with conditions that it be changed from 1 vehicle to a maximum of 3. When it came back for second reading, the ordinance was not amended, but still passed, and what has since been enforced. So we are now being enforced to only be allowed 1 vehicle per business instead of per location maximum of 3. There's a couple other discrepancies we've had as vendors. I've been working for a beach vendor or a licensed beach vendor for almost 20 years, and ATVs and side-by-sides have been part of the business model since about the early 90s. And sometimes the job calls for an ATV to be used between the hours of 9 to 5, especially a larger property that might be 3/4 of a mile long or continuous properties. A vendor might have to go from one end to the other rather quickly, not over 10 miles per hour, but a lot faster than foot, several times a day. And since this ordinance was passed on May 6th, it has been a little bit used as a gotcha policy over a vendor using it sparsely in those hours. So I have made, with the input of many other vendors, beach chairs and jet skis, as well as property owners, made some suggestions to amend the ordinance. We don't want to overstep our bounds. We don't want to hurt the public, but we also want to be able to make a living. So I feel like a little more than what we have would be fair to us. And that's it.
If you hand that hard copy to Ray, I'll get him to put it in the public record, and then we will make sure that we all get a copy of those recommendations. And one of my recommendations later on when we talk about it is I'll have the staff put it on the agenda, and we'll make it a formal agenda item, and you guys will have another opportunity to share your thoughts with us.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
And then, sorry, real quick, thanks for reminding me. We also, it was passed on May 6th, and as vendors, we were not notified of the ordinance. We actually have never been notified of the ordinance. We were only notified that we had to register our vehicles on June 11th. That was after we've received many warnings and tickets. And we still have never been officially been given a copy of the ordinance or told what it's been said. Obviously we have the ability to look it up, but our businesses were legislated with no notification. The last point was, as a very, very strong request, when beach vending ordinances come on the table, I would love if they came effect January 1st of the next year, so we can change, either amend or defend our business models to you guys, instead of middle of summer after I'm staffed, my contracts are written, my budgets are done. My whole business model has to change. So if we have time, and also that allows city staff time to properly have permitting and enforcement of it, so we can get on the same page, opposed to now we're kind of not seeing eye to eye, and I don't think it's good for us or anybody.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Yes, sir.
But go ahead and do what I said. Get that on the public record, and we'll put it on the agenda item. And hopefully, sometimes when we legislate things, there's unintended consequences that we just don't have the opportunity to flesh out here at the council level. So I'm not making excuses. I'm just telling you that we will try to rectify that and begin a dialogue and try to fix the situation.
Yes, sir. By no means do I think there's any ill will on either side.
Yeah, I remember that because I actually made that motion, and since it was brought to my attention by you that was not in there, I have already reached out to our land use attorney and made her aware, and we've gone back and seen where it exists, and I know she'll probably speak on this later when we discuss it, but it could be as simple as just, I think, not a Scribner's error, but something, whatever you would, yeah. Anyway, we're aware of it, she's aware of it, and we'll talk more about it later.
Thank you very much, Ms. President.
Thank you, sir. All right. All right, next up, Miss Patty Brown.
Hi, hi, Patty Brown, 86 Shira. Also, I own beach lot number 1 at Destiny Shores. And our complex has 13 lots on the water. And we've been using a beach service for 13 years. They service us from March 1st until October 31st. The contract we have for services with them is that they bring chairs, umbrellas. They bring additional chairs as needed. They bring water sport equipment as needed, such as stand-up paddle boards. They keep people off of our dunes who are sitting there taking pictures or playing sports or running through the dunes. They also keep the people from going up into the houses, which, although it seems very bizarre, we've had people in the hot tubs of the houses and also using the sides of the houses as bathrooms. And lastly, they oftentimes have to come and retrieve their chairs that have been thrown into the water by tourists. So these beach vendors do not serve lots that are necessarily contiguous. So what happens is if Kyle, who is with Twilight, who is who we use, comes down several times during the day. And so now he has to walk because there are no ATVs allowed between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. I suggested to him that he take his ATV out onto Old Scenic Highway 98 and come back in at James Lee Park, but they're not street legal, so they're not allowed out on James Lee, or out on Highway 98. So this is creating quite an issue where the beach vendors, at least ours, and I think many others, are not able to service their contracts. And so I know this all started by people having street legal vehicles on their beaches, but I have never seen that at Crystal Beach except for the beach cleanup people or the lifeguard vehicles. So I ask that you relook at that, not only the number but also the time, because from my understanding there have been no incidences with ATVs hurting people or causing a problem on the beach. And I know the beach vendors, at least all that I've ever worked with, are really willing to follow the rules and just be able to service their customers and to be able to run their businesses. So I ask that you look at that too, please. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, that's all the cards I have for the public portion, hearing portion. Is there anybody that has anyone like to come up and say anything at the podium on an issue that is not a public hearing? Seeing no takers, I'm going to go ahead and close this portion of the meeting. And we will move right on to City Manager's Report. 4A, take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4A is the Schedule of Fees Resolution 19-11, amending the current Schedule of Fees. I do have two items within this document that I'd like to bring up before we consider a vote or before you consider this item. I handed out a sheet at the beginning of the meeting titled at the top, Fee Schedule Corrections. I hope you all have that handy. The first item is on your report. It's on page 14 under short-term rentals. Rental registration fees is the title. The current charge for rental registration fees is $200, and that's how it reads in your current report, which is option C on the sheet that I handed out. The other two options that are available, and they have had some discussion at past meetings and workshops, are we could raise this fee and continue it being a flat fee. The number of $500 was used at one meeting that, as an example of where we could raise it to. That's negotiable. That's up to you all. I mean, it could be anywhere between the 200 and 1,000, really wherever you want to put it, if that's the option you choose. The other option is graduated fees based on the square footage of each unit. And that graduated table is in front of you. I'll read it for the people that don't have a copy. The recommended graduated use is less than 2,499 square foot, a $500 fee, between 2,500 and 4,999 square feet, $600, and then above that $700. So before you considered this item, I wanted to bring these to your attention to see if you wanted to take action on that. Also on page 17 of that report, there was a simple typo that Mr. Zunguzzi pointed out to me earlier. It is the line item under major developments. It currently reads in the copy you have, $3,250. It should have read $4,250. So I'm asking for your consideration of the first item and your consideration for correcting that typo on the second item before we take any action on this.
Mayor, I'll offer a motion. I move that we adopt the Schedule of Fees Resolution 1911 with the amendments of option A on page 14 with the graduated fees, and to correct the Scrivener's error on page 17 from $3,250 to $4,250.
I have a motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, and I have a second. Mr. Braden.
Thanks. The only other question I had about was one on page 74, the boat ramp fees. Let me get over to it. It says on the boat ramp fees, commercial daily launch and recovery fee is $20 per trailer. And then we have a Destin-based commercial launch is $1,030 per year.
Yeah, a couple of years back, council voted to give commercial vessels the opportunity to pay daily. Prior to that, it was only the year-round permit, but that was added about 2 years ago.
My question is, if I'm a livery vessel and I have 40, 50 pontoon boats, I can go get a tag or a sticker for $20 because they only use one trailer. So they maybe use two because they're all sitting on the hill, sitting on blocks. And they take that same trailer and they go get one boat and they put it in the water and they go back and get another boat, put that in the water. So they're paying $20 to launch 50 boats. So why would I pay $1,000 per year as a commercial vendor?
That was not the intent. 2 years ago, the intent was that each time a boat is launched, they pay $20.
So every time that trailer shows up, he's got to pay $20. The other one was the parking fee. I thought we just set it for $5 last year, and we were going to redo that, increase that this coming year. And it's still set at $5.
Yes, and we'll still have an opportunity to adjust that after the fiscal year starts. We wanted to get through this summer season and then come back to you with some options, including those gates that we had talked about, and to see if you wanted to leave that fee where it's at or raise it.
Yeah, I think the discussion was, right now it's $5 for a day, and we were going to be like, well, maybe $5 for 3 hours.
You're right. Okay. Thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
And we can, like you said, we can take that up before the fiscal year, right? Is that all you need, Rodney? Okay. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. I tried to look in my notes and try as I might, I couldn't find it. When we discussed these fees at the last meeting, we suggested different fees. Some of this city manager just corrected by adding this number 14, because that was something we'd asked for. But wasn't there a couple of other fee schedules that we suggested be incorporated into this that we'd be voting on tonight?
The only one I remember was impact fees on major developments, correct? Wasn't that one of the ones we discussed? Louis, would you like to address that?
Yes, correct. And that is pending a study that needs to be done. We just can't raise those fees. All the other fees for my department are included in this fee schedule.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Thanks for the clarification there. Okay. So it's, I think by statute, we have to do a study before we change impact fees. So, but I think at our discussion, we were all in favor of higher impact fees for major projects. Mr. Morgan.
So how many fees are we raising here? Obviously the short-term rentals, but I see in the red line on the, we're raising beach management fees, livery vessel fees. What else?
There's Parks and Rec fees are being raised in some areas.
Anything else of note?
There's some changes to the library fees too.
The livery vessels?
Library.
Library fees, I got you. Okay, since we're not going to be decreasing our ad valorem tax, or it doesn't look like it, I can't support this. It's a tax increase by another name. You sure you're a Republican?
I'm an independent. Remember what Danny Boone said? No, he did get killed out there, Almo,
Do
didn't
we
he?
have,
I'm not running for re-election.
there's a listing for fees based on, like, I feel like we're missing, like, lists of fees based on incident, in particular in code enforcement. Is there more than what's here, like, depending on the incident? Because it looks like the three, maybe I was looking at code enforcement is what you're doing, but it looked like there was a magistrate fee, there was a $500 a day fee if you didn't comply, and then maybe one other thing. But aren't there other tickets and fees that you assess?
What we're going up on is magistrate fees from $250 to $500, your admin fees. That we did do that. And then the parking, it's in the ordinance, we got to go up on that within the ordinance. We'll bring
Okay, and I guess that's what I'm talking
Yes,
about,
ma'am.
is more of those individual fees
Yes,
for
ma'am.
things.
Yes, ma'am.
And so that'll come to us at another time?
Yes, ma'am. I have to get with Kim and Lewis on that.
Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
all right, thank you.
Those actually require code amendments.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll go ahead and bring this to a vote. Anyone else? Everybody good with that? All right, we got a motion, we got a second. The vote is 6-1. Ayes have it.
Mr. Mayor, item 4B is the community center stucco repair. We are asking for your approval to spend up to $100,000 to replace the damaged stucco that has been eroding over the past several years. Both Lisa Firth and Michael Burgess are here to answer any specific questions about that project.
All right. Well, let's just do this, if I could, in the motion form, and so that way.
I can make that motion. I move the city council authorize city manager to initiate a contract with a qualified stucco repair contractor in an amount not to exceed $100,000, funded from the city unallocated fund balance, and make the appropriate budget amendment.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Can somebody tell me what's causing the damage and why can it not be claimed on our insurance?
Last month, I believe it was July 12th, we've been experiencing leaks at the community center for quite a while, and it was just coincidental that we had representatives from Porter Roofing there at the time. When they got up on the roof and started looking around the cupola area of the building, they noticed that the windows, a lot of the glazing is not the right term, but a lot of the sealant used on the windows had either dry rotted or was missing. In addition, they noticed several significant cracks in the stucco, and this not exclusive to that area of the building. And when they pressed on the wall, water came out of the wall. So the thought was that there may be, now that was only superficial damage, there may be other items behind the wall that would need to be addressed once that stucco is repaired. That's happened before with that same building and others.
Why can't we claim that on our insurance? Why don't they cover that?
I know Ms. Jankowski tried to turn that into the insurance, and I can't tell you the reason it got denied, I can just tell you that it got denied. But I will find out for you.
Yeah, if you would, I would love to know why, if it was neglect or why they denied us.
Well, I think part of the problem, with the building that's 31 years old, that might be, 31 years old is it? They're 32, it's built in 91, right? Yeah, so,
I've done work on homes that were 60, 70 years old that had a leak and water damage and the insurance covered it. So I'm just curious of why.
maybe commercial insurance and residential insurance is different, I don't know. I agree with you, though, I've made claims. My house is built in 81, so.
Find out when they get us an answer back.
Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you. So I noted that in the report, you mentioned that some of the windows were missing sealant and that was one of the potential causes of this problem. When were the windows replaced in that facility?
Can you hear me? Yeah. The windows have not been replaced in that building. Those are the original windows. I believe where they were pushing on the stucco was up in the cupola above the stage. And those windows have actually been sealed. Those were, probably 5, 6 years ago. They took away those are vents up there, and they sealed those off so that really isn't even a window anymore. I believe, was it plywood that they put, or, some kind of wood over the vents? Yeah, I'm not sure what they did, but they did seal that off so the vents would not be, they are not working vents. So as far as the sealants go around the windows up there, I'm not sure.
Okay, because clearly that was something that contributed to this problem because there wasn't sealant there, and it said in other areas the sealant had dry rotted. So my first question is, were the windows installed, or when we had, because I believe, weren't some of them broken and had to be replaced after a storm a few years ago? Where I'm going with all this is wondering whether the windows were sealed properly when they were put in, or whether it was a construction error. And my next thought was, if it's a dry rot issue, how often are they supposed to be sealed, and are we doing that or having someone do that?
I can tell you that when I came on board in the 2002, 2003 timeframe, the community center, along with the windows in that front foyer, were leaking. And ever since then, we've been trying to get them to quit leaking. I know that Public Services took it upon themselves once to go up there and try to caulk all those windows closed. That didn't work. The next year, we had a professional window company come out and remove what Public Services put on there and then re-caulk it again. And I think they have just failed at this point.
Well, then my question would be, before we approve stucco repair, we better approve window repair first.
Well,
okay, so I think we need to look into some structural issues prior to doing the stucco, because the stucco is just the outward appearance.
Yeah, or if the windows are continuing to leak, we'll be looking at replacing it again. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to, put a facing over top of a bad product. It's not going to, we'll be right back to square one. So, Michael, are you guys on that, or is that going to be part of this $100,000?
no.
Yes, you all approved the windows to be repaired in last year's budget. And we were thinking that while we were having the windows replaced, we could go ahead and have all this stucco addressed.
That takes me back to my original point then. So if we paid to have someone come in and check all the windows, if they're leaking around the windows, how can we say that job was done diligently? It wasn't done yet.
We have not done the windows yet. We are waiting for the roof, starting from the top. We had the roof, we had some leakage in the roof. So now the roof, we believe, is sealed. And so we had the windows in the budget for this year, actually last year, and we moved it over. So we don't want to do the windows until we had the roof fixed, and now the stucco and the windows are all kind of put together. We need to put, we had the shutters on the windows, those have failed, so we're going with tempered windows for the foyer. And then we need the stucco redone.
Mr. Mitchell?
Thank you, Lisa.
Mayor, you mentioned to him to talk about structural issues. My question is, now that we've just talked about the windows and the stucco, is there any other maintenance issues that we need to be aware of? Or if these two issues are fixed, will that make it whole?
Once we get in there, I mean, I would think that's, behind the stucco, we don't know what we're going to get into.
It could be more rotted out wood and all, I'm just saying. So obviously, common sense is going to, once they inspect it, they open the patient up for surgery, once they get in, going to have to come back to us and obviously see if there's other repair work that needs to be done. Okay.
Mr. Braden?
If the windows was approved last year, why weren't they done then?
Because the roof was leaking, and no window contractors wanted to come in and do anything, and then we couldn't get a warranty on that. Was the leak coming from the roof or the windows, at that time? Because it is seeping into the windows, but the roof was definitely leaking also.
So you have money budgeted, just to make everybody clear, we have money budgeted to fix windows, and then we're asking to finish the project for the stucco.
That is
after
correct.
we fix the windows.
That's correct.
That's what the 100,000 is for, to finish the job. All right? Any other comments from anyone? We have a motion. We have a second. Vote unanimous, so moved. Mr. Braden, seeing how this is up your alley, you can go inspect what they're doing to make sure we get our $100,000 worth, okay?
$100,000 ain't gonna touch it, I can tell you that.
Let's go item C.
Item 4C is the development review and municipal software solution. We have Mr. Warren here and Mr. Zanguzzi here to talk about this process, which will take approximately 2 years and beyond to fully implement.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. What you have before you today is a proposed municipal software solution for the city of Destin. And I'd like to lead in that our organization has experienced a tremendous amount of change in the recent year. And in recent months, our staff has really appreciated how our city council and our new employees are fostering that new work culture and embracing teamwork, innovation, and process improvement. And in recent months, code compliance and community development department have filled crucial positions throughout the departments. And what we've done with those staff replacements, we have formed a new software implementation team with representatives from the community development department, code compliance, public services, and IT. The focus of this team has been to collaborate to find innovative solutions to improve our organizational efficiency in permitting, review, inspection, code compliance, and financial processes. First of all, I'd like to talk about the team that we formed. And this team, I've got to tell you, has been just first class. I'd like to thank Mr. Zanguzzi on his staff and how they've contributed to this and have been very proactive in this process to help us figure out what is the best solution for the city. A summary of efforts by this team include the following. We've identified challenges and opportunities for improvement in organizational processes and workflow. We've also identified some desired outcomes from this proposed initiative. We've received feedback from similar municipalities and counties who are currently engaged in these initiatives. We've also attended numerous demonstrations from industry-leading civic solution providers. We've also identified the internal personnel resources needed to do this. And we've also identified the appropriate funding for this project. I'd like to highlight some of the challenges that we've identified in this, and that is number one, we want to better unify information amongst the different departments as it relates to our permitting, review, and inspection and code processes. Another thing that we've identified is we've really worked hard on the Citizen Serve software package and code enforcement, or excuse me, code compliance over the last several years. That was a relatively low cost and quick entry to digitize the code enforcement processes and as well as manage our rental programs. However, we've identified some shortcomings in that package as it relates to expanding it over to some of the other community development processes. We've also identified that our field personnel need improved access to files, and as a whole, we just need to improve our workflow and make our software as user-friendly to our staff as well as our public that visits us. The desired outcomes for this initiative is to digitize our workflow processes, to reduce our cycle times for permits, plan review, and inspections, improve our operations, to decrease email and phone traffic. Overall, our goal is to make us as efficient as possible to serve our customers. The city has solicited feedback from cities such as Sanibel Island, Hallandale Beach, Marco Island, and Gulf Shores. These cities are in various stages of implementing the software, and city staff has been monitoring the procurement processes of these different cities as well as others. Excuse me. One thing of note, these different cities, is that they've been going through this process, is they have emphasized how important it is to have the proper resources and staffing in order to accomplish this initiative. And as of recent, increased staffing in community development and code compliance helps to ensure that the city has the appropriate personnel to implement this project. Some of the software package we reviewed has been Acela, Intergov, CityView, iWorks, CitizenServe, just to name a few. The estimated cost for the software packages have ranged all the way up to $200,000. After analyzing all this information and looking at our desired outcomes and deficiencies in some of our current processes, staff believes that Intergov is the right solution for Destin. Intergov is the software that our financial system, Munis or Tyler Technology, owns. And so what is a benefit from this, number one, they're one of the top solution providers in the nation, and number two, they actually work together. So that helps simplify our financial processes and integrate it with all our other processes within the city. We have internal staff that is already very familiar with the Tyler Technology and Intergov systems. Several Florida cities similar to Destin use the Intergov system. And last of all, our team has identified a funding source, and that is the Community Development Tech Fund, which is specifically established for initiatives such as this. So with all that said, staff is bringing forth this agenda item and is asking that council allow staff to go out and negotiate a contract with Tyler Technologies Intergov Solutions, or the alternate motion would be to issue an RFP and bring that back to council at a later time.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm still kind of aggravated that this process hasn't started before now. I know it's been a little over 2 months that we approved this. And with approving it again tonight, approving the funds, I'm not looking for staff to wait till Black Friday to see if it goes on sale. I ain't looking for, to see if we can hire more personnel before we decide to go buy it. When the council says buy it, it means buy it. It don't mean for the staff to decide when they want to buy it, or when Bragg decides he wants to release the funds or shift the funds over or whatever, is to buy it. I mean, it's just frustrating that we're here to this point, and I don't know where this 2 years came from. I mean, I've spoke to Lewis on multiple occasions, and he's putting 2 of these systems in place, and every time it's 9 months to a year at the max to get everything up to speed, and all the personnel up to speed, and everything 100% running. So if the people that we have can't get it done in a year, then they need to go find something else to do, and we need to hire somebody that can, because the money's there. This is $150,000. There's twice that in the budget, or in the account that I was told. there's $300,000 in there that's been collected over the years for this. So if we can take some of that money and hire somebody to get this thing up and running. It's not to spend 6 months negotiating a contract with somebody, just to get it done. And if we can't find somebody that, can get it done, then we need to hire somebody that can get it done and move forward. It's frustrating to me that we approved it, and then 2.5 months ago, here we are again talking about it and still haven't done anything. So I don't want to come back up, 2 or 3 months now, and yeah, we finally negotiated a price, and it's going to be another 6 months before they can get started on it. I'm ready to move forward with it, and I think this council's ready to move forward and get it going. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Marlar.
Thank you, Mayor. Basically, I understand Mr. Braden's frustration, but I do also understand that it's not just like buying some software for your house and being loaded up, because we have a lot of systems that everything, and that's basically my question. Everything we're doing, make sure that we are making sure that every program we get talks to each other. In other words, we don't have any major issues that this program won't work with that program or anything like that. I personally am still having some difficulty with Outlook. I really like the old system, but I understand why we changed. But that's the major thing, I'm guessing, is that part of the reason that it's taking so long, everything has to gel in such a way that that whatever we buy, whatever we do, whatever we install can talk to each, through the other programs. Am I correct, Webb? I'm not missing that?
That's correct. But I would like to point out, and I did say 2 years, there's going to be some extended development in the system. However, if you read in the agenda item, it does say that it will be substantially complete in approximately 1 year. That is the core part of the system, but as with any good system, there'll be ongoing development as it gets beyond that. But the core system, we anticipate in approximately a year to be installed from the start of the go date.
All right, thank you, sir. Ms. Ramswell?
Thank you, Mayor. So my question is this. It makes it sound, when you go through the list of the items that are problematic and need to be resolved through this software, it makes it sound like everything we have is on paper and has never been scanned into anything. Is that the case?
It's not entirely the case. However, we do have a lot of records that are still paper.
So why couldn't we start helping this process by having people in their own departments start scanning things into a main drive, like a J drive or whatever y'all call the main drive here?
That's a great question, Councilwoman Ramswell, and we have been doing some scanning of that, and one of the challenges is ensuring the quality of that data and creating metadata that is very accurate so that we can make sure that the right data is attributed to the right information. And that is a very tedious and a very exact process. And so you'll see in our next agenda item, we want to accelerate that as quickly as possible and get that in the hands of professionals so that we can get that tedious process out of our way so that we can be focusing on these important things like this so that we can do, as Mr. Braden would like to see, this thing move as expeditiously as possible.
I hear what you're saying, but thinking that if you start scanning things in a logical fashion, you can worry about the metadata and the tags when the experts come in or when the software is installed. You can go back and see community development, DOs 2017. A very logical sequence. You know that's everything there. You know already the main tags. Then you could go in and I'm just guessing. I just know the bare basics about this software. But to help move things along, it seems like it would be very constructive to try to get in the system online electronically what we have, because that alone is a very, very time-consuming task. I know. I've seen the files in those back rooms personally, and I can't believe they're not online. And when one of those disappears, that means no one in this building, no one in this city has it except the person that took it, and we've come across that.
We have spent a number, I'd hate to estimate how many man-hours scanning in information as you discussed, and it is a very tedious process. We're talking about paper for the last 35 years. And a lot of it is in formats that are very large, and it's in numerous different formats. It's in different parcels that have changed, been subdivided. It is quite an interesting process. And we have a lot of data that is digitized. We also have a lot of data in existing systems that we will be converting from this system into a new system. So it is a tremendous amount of work. But we believe what we're presenting to you is the most efficient and the quickest way that we can get this done so that we can be focusing on efficiency.
Well, and trust me, I want this done for you all probably as much as you all want it, but I'm trying to think of things to try to help this process along, and if there is anything this council can do, please tell us, because it's vital that we get all of our stuff organized and online, and I can't tell you how many times I've asked someone for something, well, that doesn't exist. Yeah, it does, because I have a copy of it because I went into the files and got it myself. So, I mean, those are significant shortfalls that we as a city have to overcome.
You know, there's an interesting thing that as we have gone through this process, and especially seeing a lot of the new blood that's come in, and again, I can't commend Mr. Zanguzzi and his staff enough for their support on this. This is a culture change. This is a culture change within our staff, within the city, within our contractors, within our strategic partners. And we've been very comfortable. Look at me with my notes on my paper right here. And some of these processes we have to change as individuals so that we can get it digital and make it as efficient as possible. So sometimes it's easier said than done changing the culture, but the folks that we're working with right now, if anybody can do it, I assure you they will, and I'm excited to work with them.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramswell. Mr. Menchel.
Thank you, Mayor. Since I've been sitting in this seat, we've been talking about manpower, which we've approved. We've been talking about budget, so obviously I too want to see this happen. I have a series of questions, again, to kind of stimulate people to start thinking of this, because there's other factors and other charges I'm going to talk about. Assuming, and I'll make the recommended motion, okay, in just a minute. But if we say yes now, will this thing be turned on, not up and running completely, but when will it be plugged in, if you will? By December? Not necessarily up and running, functioning, but what I'm saying is, how long, I understand what you just said, it'll be a year, and things have to be transitioned in, I get it. But when will somebody actually have access to it?
So part of the contract negotiations include actually establishing that start time, because as employee intensive as this is also resource intensive from any proposed contractor. So we will have to establish that the start date. Initial conversations show that we could potentially start, depending on when we execute this contract, potentially start at the turn of the year. Okay, and from that start date, it will take approximately a year to finish the first stage, which is basically going live with all the first level processes, which is a significant amount of work and a significant amount of results.
Okay, so first of all, turn of the year is just, it turns on, and it's going to take a year to get it up and running before somebody's actually going to be able to use it. I'm just trying to make sure we all understand. That's the first thing.
Yes, sir, and let me make sure I clarify that. When we say turn on, it will be turned on within this building as we're working on it, but it may not be available to the public till we go live, which will be approximately a year.
Right, okay. Obviously, you talked about years and years and years of data, okay? And not only did Councilman Ramswell talk about information, she mentioned about the fact that she asked for something, they said they didn't have it, and then she has it. I've asked for additional things, and other things are missing. So again, until this stuff's scanned in, you're going to keep having those problems. Have you have any estimate as to how much it's going to cost an outside vendor to do all of the scanning?
Yes, sir. In fact, it's in our next agenda item that we're proposing, and it will be approximately, what we're asking for is up to $70,000.
And that'll do it all?
Our best guesstimates.
Okay, well,
and that's all we can do, because such a volume, you take
okay,
an
that's
estimate.
Fine. Next question. Obviously, like Councilman Ramswell discussed, different departments have different pieces of a file. Okay, they're here, they're there. How will staff go about, if you will, how are you going to put together, commingle a file for input? Like what department head, in other words, you've got a document, 10 of the pages are in one department, 20 of the pages are the other. Have you set up a mechanism? We're going to have a group of people together to assimilate all of that paperwork for the input?
You're asking some very, very good questions, and that's some things that we've talked about as a team. First of all, as we look back, there's kind of an inflection point here that we're going to have, which is moving forward and then looking backwards. As we look backwards, it will never be perfect because we're dealing with imperfect records that are on paper. However, our goal is to make those as close to perfect as we can, okay?
We'll make our imperfection perfect.
Yeah,
Okay.
and perfect is a big stretch because we're dealing with a lot of separate paper records that may have been a previous address, a previous parcel. So what the goal is to digitize those, optical character recognition those, find that metadata, and join them up with previous parcel numbers, existing addresses, and previous addresses. And that's how you do that.
Okay. I'd like to make the recommended motion, and obviously we can have other discussion, but I'd like to move that for the city manager and his designee, negotiate and execute a contract not to exceed $200,000 from Tyler Technologies EnerGov Municipal Software Solution, and to be paid for out of the Community Development Technology Fund.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Mr. Destin.
Thanks. I echo the sentiments of Mr. Braden. Mash the accelerator on this thing. Let's get it done. Shifting off of that, I'll be the token millennial up here and ask the question, what sort of security protocols are we going to follow? I mean, here's my concern. There is an unsort of discussed and not really covered epidemic of ransomware, and municipalities in the United States are the target. There are dozens and dozens and dozens of cities that have been forced basically to buy Bitcoin and send it off to St. Petersburg or Nigeria or wherever to get access back into their own servers and their own data. Some cities are more vulnerable than others. My question is, what kind of security protocols do we intend to implement with this? Because we can put all of our data online and we could share it, but the risk is that we might expose ourselves to some real serious security threats. And if we go and digitize everything, throw the hard copies away, then we could lose everything in an instant if we're not completely prepared. So, I mean, are we talking cold storage? Are we talking, shadow backups? What do you guys think?
Another great question, and it certainly is a huge concern for governments in today's world. So good news, we have existing staff that specializes in just that. So you have two focuses as it comes to this software. You have our network security that we're focused on with our existing staff, and then we rely upon this gold partner with Microsoft, who is EnerGov, who in fact is doing their webinars on how secure their software is. So we are confident that it will be secure. We will be constantly double checking those measures to make sure that it is secure for our public.
Okay.
Mr. Braden.
Thank you. One last thing or two. City manager, I want to update on every council meeting from here on out on where we stand with this, what's going on the negotiation, the whole process until we get someone hired and start this project. And another is, whenever we do get a group doing this, when they need a department head to come in for training, that you make sure that it's mandatory that if they say that I need you on this certain date, this department head, they're there. Not, well, I can't do it today because I got, a dentist appointment or whatever. We're not going to keep kicking the can down the road. When they need them, they're there. Thank you.
All right then. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion. We have a second. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Lance?
Item 4D is a sister item to what we just discussed. It's the digitization of the Community Development Department files. If you have not seen the room back there, I would ask that you get with Mr. Zanguzzi in the near future and take a walk to the backside of this building and look at the boxes stacked on top of boxes, stacked on top of boxes, about 30 years worth of documents in all different sizes, from this size to full-size plat maps, that we simply don't have the equipment to do that right now. So this is to allow us to farm this out to professionals that can do it and do it fast and make it compatible with this new system. So if there's any other questions, I'll turn it back to Mr. Warren.
I think we've covered that, and again, this will allow us to, as you said, mash the accelerator on this and get this step out of the way so that we can focus on the software implementation itself.
Mr. Mitchell.
I move that the city manager enter an agreement with the digitization service not to exceed $70,000 for digitization of city records and fund the task with the unallocated fund balance and make the appropriate budget amendment.
Second.
I got a motion, I got a second. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved.
Item 4E is the 2020 strategic plan summary. Back on May the 15th, council held a visioning workshop, and discussed how we wanted to proceed for the next year, and then how we wanted to proceed for the next up to 5 years on different items. There's a summary sheet that is in your packet, and we've viewed it at previous council meetings and at workshops. As the new fiscal year actually is approaching fairly rapidly, I wanted to get your opinion as to if we can adopt this as is for fiscal 2020 or adopt it with changes. It will aid both staff and should aid council in future decision-making, because it lays out the priorities that you indicated to us during that visioning session. I will say that despite what some people think, these documents need to be a living document, so they can be changed from time to time, and they should be changed from time to time when the situations change. So I would ask for your approval either as is or as you would like to amend it.
Looking for a motion?
I make a motion to approve as presented.
We have a motion. Got a second? Any discussion? Seeing none. Ayes have it, so moved.
Mr. Mayor, item 4F is regarding the Haas Center study for beach initiative, and with regards to our Triumph application. We have two proposals from the Haas Center to provide us data that's critical, we believe, in order to obtain grants from Triumph. There's a 3-month program, is that correct? Maybe longer than that. I can tell you there's an abbreviated program and there's a 1-year program, and we should probably consider both of them. The 1-year program does include the first phase, which is something we could get in our application quicker than waiting for a full year, but I still think would be worthwhile to proceed with the full year. Mr. Warren has actually researched this more than I have, so he could answer any questions you might have about this.
What you have before you is the Haas Center study for our Beach Initiative and Triumph application. We did recently get back our Triumph pre-application, which basically gave us the green light, although it is not a binding approval for actual funding. It just basically says that we're on the right track and we need to continue forward. I have to emphasize this Triumph process is very, very metric driven, and that is the reason that we are looking at this study. We've been going back and forth with the Haas study to get this proposal narrowed down, and we believe that this will greatly enhance our chances of obtaining successful funding from the Triumph process.
Ms. Ramswell.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, so I have some concerns, and I'll just be frank with you that this seems like a lot of money to spend on just doing an application and providing various metrics to support the different needs of the application. They admittedly, in their own letter, said that they have done a study on Destin, they've done a study for the Okaloosa TDC. Most of these facts and figures are available online through our TDC, through reporting to the state of Florida. And I'm wondering why we have to spend this kind of money when honestly I feel like I personally could pull together this information. Now, I'm not a grant writer, I couldn't do that part, but the metrics themselves I feel are already there. So tell me why we need to spend this kind of money to have someone pull together these metrics. I mean, just off the top of my head, I mean, things to look at: number of tourists, the amount of money brought in, look at the footage, the square footage of the beach that we have versus I mean, there's all sorts of data and metrics that are easily accessible that we could pull together. So help me, convince me we need to spend this money.
One of the most, let me open up the agenda item here, specifically quantitative evidence demonstrating how the proposed project or program will promote economic recovery, diversification, and enhancement of the disproportionately affected counties and cities. And as we have been going through the Triumph process and looking at successful applications and unsuccessful applications, it really boils down to job creation. And those metrics are where we're not able to put our fingers on what does beach parks and what is that green space and what is that public space that people are coming down for the beach, how does that affect our jobs and our economy here in Destin? And you're correct, there is a lot of information out there as it relates to what people are spending and things like that, but adding it all together into the metrics that Triumph wants is where we have not been able to put our fingers on.
My question to add to what Ms. Ramswell has said is I also noticed the timeline, and it's almost like they can't provide us the information we really need in a timely manner in line with applying with Triumph. Did you see that as a challenge? You and I didn't, we've been working together on this for a long time, but when I saw this, I wanted to ask you that question.
Sure.
I'm worried about that.
Yeah, and I also worried about that, but as we were going through it, it's the first phase, which is 4 to 5 months, and that's the crux of the phase that we believe will give us the information that we need to submit the application. But however, it's not over there with Triumph. There is a ton of metrics that must be followed up with on a regular basis in order to keep those funds.
To address your question, Ms. Ramswell, my only question was the timeliness of it, if we could get the information in time. I think it's money well spent when we're talking about trying to attain $12 million grant. Maybe we can look into accumulating that information with what's already provided. Give us a couple, maybe between now and the next council meeting. I don't know. We haven't had a chance to talk about it, Webb. If we could get the information we need to make a presentation on the return of investment, because that's what this is all about. For them to give us $12 million, we've got to show them some economic facts.
Absolutely.
So they can base it, because ROI is real important to them for this particular portion of the Triumph funding. So that's why one of the first things, I'm the one that actually brought up the Haas Center, because they were instrumental in the last time the city had an evaluation of the importance of the Destin Harbor. That was real instrumental in me and my fishery politics battles trying to get a new management plan for the Charter Association. So that's why I lean towards going to the Haas Center to get these economic study done to give us the most amount of ammo we could bring to the fight to get the funding.
And I'm agreeing with you completely in terms of their level of success and their reputation. But I mean, right off the bat, similar projects, economic impact of tourism in Destin, Florida. That's a completed study they've done. Has anyone checked with our Economic Development Council? They've done all sorts of independent surveys and research and data that's been collected. So it's not that I'm opposed, it's just this is an awful lot of money at a time when we're literally, I mean, when are we not pinching pennies? But I did research and analysis for a living for the federal government. This is an area I specialize in. I know what's out there, and that's what bothers me is I'm seeing these numbers, and I know most of this exists right now. That why recreate the wheel? And I can answer that. It's because we want to get the grant. But is it? I don't know. Let's hear for some of the rest of the council.
So I'll jump in. I see your point. There's a lot of general questions that have data sets that have already been analyzed for our specific area that we surely need to piggyback off of. And I think whatever contract gets negotiated has the latitude, because what we're going to end up doing is saying, you know, awarding a contract not to exceed amount. We're going to have to work with the Haas Center, understanding that where there is already data sets and research that can answer some of the questions that are going to be posed to us, that we don't reinvent the wheel like you mentioned. But at the end of the day, there is going to have to be a significant amount of synthesizing the general information down, ground truthing the analytics that are very specific to our project so that they can have the assurances that this is going to give them the ROI that they need. So, right, and so I think that I wouldn't be interested in authorizing this money if I didn't think it was completely necessary. And so to that extent, I'm going to make the recommended motion. I move that the City Council authorize the City Manager to negotiate and execute a contract with the Haas Center at the University of West Florida for up to $59,000 to fund an economic study and allocate $20,000 from the City Council contingency account, $5,000 from the City Manager contingency account, and $34,000 from the unallocated fund balance, and make the appropriate budget amendments.
I got a motion,
Second.
and I got a second. Mr. Braden?
How did we come to the $59,000?
We reached out to the Haas Center and we discussed the criteria for this project, and that is the estimate that they gave us.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. Give everyone a heads up, when we get done with the city manager report, we'll take a short break. Unless you want to take one now. Let's just take one right now, because we're about halfway through that. We still got some more things to discuss. 5-minute break. All right, everyone. We'll go ahead and call the meeting back to order. And we left off on item 4G, the beach area paid parking update. Take it away, Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4G is just a very quick verbal update on the beach area paid parking that we discussed at the previous meeting. Mr. Warren has that update.
At the last budget workshop, we had talked about paid parking, and we said we were going to bring an item back this meeting. We want to make sure that is ready, and as we've been doing the research on this, and we have had a lot of research. We want to make sure it's fully ready, so we want to give you an update that we will be bringing this back to you in the next 2 meetings for some further information as it relates to our beach parking. In the meantime, though, we will be correcting some drainage issues, correct me if I'm wrong, Michael, down by Noriega Point, on the side of the road, and one of the areas we will be proposing for paid parking. So.
Lance?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Item 4H is Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park plans. The plans that were attached to this item hopefully are the final construction drawings for this project. If council approves these, we will submit these back to the state of Florida for their final approval. They get to weigh in one more time because they get to make sure that all the elements we promised them would be in that park are in that park. Once they sign off on it, we still have the other parallel program going on. We're waiting for U.S. Treasury to provide the money. So we have several processes in place right now, all running parallel. So I would just ask for your approval or let me know what we need to change, because I think these are as close to the final deal as we've ever been. So.
Mr. Braden, we'll start off with you, because if you'll approve this plan, we will move forward. Go ahead, Rodney.
Why can we not send this out for a bid while this is going back to the state for approval? Why can we not send this out for bid while it's going to the state for approval?
So the state approval is because they helped purchase the land originally. If we start the process of construction, which bidding would start that process, without U.S. Treasury's approval of our funding, then we are on our own dime.
Okay, so how long, what do you anticipate getting this back from the state for approval?
I don't anticipate them having any real difficulties with this, because all of the elements, to my knowledge, that they've been promised since day one are still included in this project. So this is going to be hopefully is going to be a cursory review on their part.
So we're 30 days?
I'll say 60 to be safe, somewhere in that area. I just don't anticipate issues because to my knowledge, we have all the elements in there still.
So when we get it back and they put their stamp of approval on it, then we can put it out for bid?
No, that's the state process that's underway. The other process is the federal process, the U.S. Treasury process. They hold the money bag. So we need U.S. Treasury to approve our ORAC grant to give us the funding, which was close to $1.25 million for this project to build it.
So we won't start building this park anytime soon?
No, sir.
Thank you.
Any guess? No?
I can tell you that on the county's last agenda, there was an item, the first one I have ever remembered seeing, approving an ORAC grant. So Treasury is starting to give approval, and they hand the money to the county, and then the county hands it out to the subrecipient, in our case us. So there is one on their agenda for approval, so it's starting to move.
Can we sniff around and see if we can get a timeline from them?
We can. Right now, it's we can do that.
And just, without stepping on anybody's toes, just friendly call. Hey, what's our situation?
So we are much closer. I think I filled council in on this last meeting. If I didn't, I apologize. But Treasury did respond back to the county, who responded back to us with some of the final questions for us to cover and clear up. That's a good sign. And we have that list of questions completed and sent back to them. So, I mean, we should be in the final queue.
All right, kick some tires, see what you can find out, just for our general knowledge. Mr. Desson.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'm not interested in really waiting a long time for this project to get started. And if we get closer to December and we're still waiting, don't be surprised if I throw some motions out there that we're going to build this damn thing. And either they can pay for it, or we're going to pay for it, but we're going to build this damn park. We're not kicking it through another election cycle. It's done. We're doing it. So if the county's listening, if the Treasury's listening, we're going to build this.
Second.
So you can drag your feet if that's what the plan is, but we're building this park. So enough is enough. So we're gonna give you the opportunity to get a blessing from the state, and I don't think that should probably take too long. And like I said, we're gonna have to make some serious progress with regards to the federal government as filtered through our friends at the county. And if I don't see some real positive forward motion real soon, we're going to start making some budget amendments. We're going to build this park. So I'll leave it at that.
Is that the motion, sir?
And not yet.
Nope, I'm going to let somebody else give the recommended motion. I don't have the stomach for it.
All right. Item I. We do need a final. Okay, go for it.
I'll make it. I'll try anyway. I move that the council approve the Captain Royal Melvin Heritage Park plan subject to meeting all applicable land development and building codes, and authorize city manager to forward the approved document to the Florida Community Trust.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none? The vote is unanimous. County, federal government, so moved. All right. Item I.
Council, we are having a bit of technical difficulty here. We're hoping to have a visual aid for you. Lance is forwarding it to Webb and Kathy right now. Essentially, this is part of the Gulf Power discussions and negotiations.
Well, I can jump in here. As your designated information gatherer with regards to the Gulf Power franchise negotiations, what they've requested from us is a pretty straightforward request for our priorities for undergrounding. So we've asked them for a cost estimate to underground the entire city. Within that, we also know that we're going to have to do it in phases. You know, you just are not going to underground the city at once. So there's likely to be multiple phases. This could take as long as a decade or more. But we have to, as the council, give general guidance to Chef, who was unable to come tonight. He had a trial, but basically he'll synthesize what we give him from this discussion to incorporate into our response to Gulf Power. So basically, the question is, how do you prioritize undergrounding utilities within a city? Well, you're undergrounding utilities primarily for reliability purposes, and then also there's the aesthetic portion that plays into it. So basically, there is already a priority list of structures and organizations that are given priority after a blackout event to have service reestablished by virtue of Gulf Power, and it follows mostly public safety, health, welfare sort of principles, which is, I think, probably the wisest way that we prioritize undergrounding utilities. So to say all that, it is prioritizing basically safety services. So you would want to underground the firehouse, the police substation. You'd want to make sure that nursing homes, hospitals, those areas that are going to be the most important to have reestablished after a hurricane are the ones that you want to protect first. From there, then it likely goes to, well, then you want to extend out to the main feeder lines and the main thoroughfare of town, Highway 98, and then double back likely and start servicing the neighborhoods and taking them down bit by bit over a series of phases. That's my suggestion. Now, you guys are welcome to hop in, and it would probably be welcome to offer your thoughts so that we can synthesize a bit of guidance for Chef. But that's kind of the track I think probably is the wisest way to follow, which is basically public services first and then hitting Highway 98 and then back into the neighborhoods.
And Parker, just to add on to that, this is currently, what we're doing is Lance is drafting a letter to send to Gulf Power, to Bernard. We're going to attach some sort of visual aid for them so that they know the general phasing as we want it, the order. This is actually a attachment from the previous Gulf Power when they gave us their ballpark estimate. This was their suggested phase development. So that's currently how the letter is drafted, and you'll see phase 1 over on the western end, and then phase 3 over on the very eastern end, and phase 2 in the middle. Now, you might want to change this as Parker has suggested, so just for your consideration.
Well, furthermore, this cost estimate says $169 million. I will say that this was with, this is the cost estimate that was given to us when Southern Company was drafting the estimate, and I'll tell you with not so flattering terms, that is grossly too much. And it was on purpose, because in a negotiation, if you don't want to underground, you just put a sticker price on the cost to underground that nobody could swallow. You make it so costly that it'll never happen. And that's the 169 million number. Now, I can't promise you where it may finally land, but I know it's going to be by many factors less than that, just by virtue of having NextEra, who is actually interested in undergrounding their own utilities, unlike their predecessor, Southern Company. So that 169 is going to be a different number as we move forward, but we have to give them a priority of what we want to see and from a phase and undergrounding standpoint, so that they can generate us a new number that will far likely be smaller than 169.
Seeing how you have the microphone, Mr. Destin, would you like to initiate a prioritized list to start the discussion?
Well, I gave it earlier. It's basically we're gonna go with public safety and follow basically getting the firehouse undergrounded, getting the nursing home undergrounded, making sure that we get our EOC undergrounded. Basically following, and we're only going to give basically guidance to Chef. So basically we're going to go public health, safety, welfare, important priorities, and then shift over. We're going to do the 98 corridor, and then my suggestion would be go from there, taking the north-south major roads back into the neighborhoods and phase it out in an appropriate timeline.
Ms. Braden.
Thanks. Yeah, I want to see the place that we always seem to go to last is our front door, and that's Highway 98. Yeah, that'd be my vote to, to the bridge, to Airport Road, get that underground first.
I think that's right in line with what Mr. Destin has in mind, as well outside of the fire departments. And Mr. Oberdeer.
Okay, so I guess I don't understand it sounds like we're jumping around. We're going to do public services, which is not on 98. Okay, but we're just going to like run it down Airport Road and do that? I mean, we're going to keep going in the same direction. We're not just going to jump around.
There's a couple of methodologies that you can use, but basically most of our health safety stuff is based on Airport Road adjacent, which you can run it straight up to the substation or link into the existing underground that we did on Main Street. So if we can get a few of those first, and then we'll have to deal with how do we tap into the substation, because the high tension lines that are back behind Big Kahunas we never can bury. So basically it's about reaching those and then taking 98, linking it back in, and then spreading out in the other, north-south from Benning Beach, Main Street's done down until, is it down until Kelly?
Yes.
Right. And then you can prioritize going back into some of the neighborhoods, like where the mayor lives and elsewhere.
Of course. No, but basically taking the east-west approach and then a north-south approach is with our major roads. And we know what our major roads are, north and south: Calhoun, Beach, Benning, Main Street. And of course, we have our back roads and then Highway 98. So that's going to be the starting point. Some of our neighborhoods like Indian Bayou is already underground, and a lot of the newer ones. So, yeah, like Mr. Destin said, it'll be a multi-year or maybe a multi-decade process to get the entire community in this position. But, you know, what they're asking for, SHIP especially needs is a list, a prioritized list. And I think I guess you're taking notes, right? So will you have that? Ms. Ramswell?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So my thought is along the same lines as Councilman Braden, and that is trying to do 98, because the other way I look at it is if something happens and the power lines are down in significant places, we clearly are going to need to have 98 clear as evacuation routes or emergency routes. So for me, it seems logical that we would want to try to do our main thoroughfares first. Also, Parker, I believe at one point, didn't we hear an estimate cost of $1 million a mile? And is that still?
Yeah, that was with Gulf Power in the early bits of this process.
Just out of curiosity, how many miles is this?
I think we have, around 95 miles of roads within the city of Destin, approximately. So, you know, that was
3 years ago.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, those are all numbers that were given to us by Gulf Power, who had no intention of ever letting us underground the city. So
Well, even
don't try
that's
to write on
91
those numbers.
yeah.
We're working with a partner now that actually has the ability and the want to underground the city. So I'm very eager and anxious and excited, honestly, to see how we can get this put into a franchise agreement so that we can get this process started, because it will be a beautiful place to live, and it will be a safer place to live by investing in our own infrastructure.
All right. I think you got the prioritized list that we need. So let's move on to the STR. Next one. Item 4J.
Mr. Mayor, I believe Mr. Bailey has passed out membership applications for the short-term rental task force. And at this time, if council members would like to nominate members of that task force, that would be appropriate.
I'll nominate one, Mr. Mayor, if you like.
Okay. Do we want to go each council member nominate one, or do we just want to take a list as a whole? Just have a motion that we just approve the ones that are on the list, or do we have more than what's necessary? We have more? Okay, well, we'll just take it right down the list. Mr. Destin, you got your name up first, so.
I'm going to nominate Jeff Markin.
Okay, we have a nomination, Jeff Markin. Need a second?
Second.
Got a second. You want to vote on each one of them individually, or we can just wait?
Just vote them all individually.
Okay. Any discussion on Jeff Markin? Seeing none? Unanimous, so moved. Mr. Morgan?
I'm not going to be nominating anybody at this time.
All right. Mr. Marler?
Bruce Crowell.
Got a
Second.
Got a motion, got a second? Let's go ahead and vote. I'm going right down the line, so. Ayes, unanimous, so moved. Mr. Oberdear? We have a motion?
Second.
Got a second? Any further discussion? Unanimous, so moved. Mr. Mitchell?
I nominate Marcy Bell.
We have a motion?
Second.
Got a second? Any discussion? Seeing none? Unanimous, so moved. Ms. Ramswell.
I'm going to renominate Patty Brown, who was my nominee for the first go-round.
We have a motion and a second. Unanimous, so moved. Mr. Braden.
Mine's going to be Mr. Sean Hickey.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none? And we need to, unanimous, so moved. We need one more, right? One more nomination?
Not necessarily
Not
if
necessarily.
Mr. Morgan doesn't.
I don't know anybody on the form, and I don't feel comfortable appointing somebody.
No,
I've
there's no
never spoken
pressure.
to.
I mean,
Yeah. So, I'm sure I can appoint somebody at a later date, but 6 people, they all seem qualified. Yeah.
They've got a quorum, so they should be
And
fine.
then
with 6.
surely if there's a 3-3 vote, the city council can break the tie.
all right, no problem. We're done. Congratulations, everybody that got voted on. Looking forward to hearing your recommendations, because you still got a lot of work to do, and one of the things that I'd like to see the STR do when they reconvene is, at the end of this year, evaluate the effectiveness of some of the things that we put into place with a report back to the council. I think that'd be real important, just to see, where we're at the end of the 2019 vacation season.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Finally, I have a couple of quick announcements. On August the 12th, a week from today, at 6 p.m., we will have our final workshop on the budget in this room. August the 12th at 6 p.m., right here. Right here, right. And then just a quick announcement on, we were able to finally fill 2 critical positions today. I'm happy to announce that. We have a new IT manager in place, and we also have a new stormwater manager in place. We hope to bring them around to a future council meeting so y'all can meet them. So that,
Give us their names.
That fills 2 big holes. Thank you very much, Stephen. I can tell you that the IT manager's name is Matthew Pace, and our stormwater manager, Sarah Sims. Thank you. Yep. Sorry, I need to practice my new names. So,
Position was Matthew Pace?
our new IT manager.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
He ran for council in 2014 and is librarian's stepson, I believe, former librarian.
Yep, that's correct. Look forward to having them both on board and getting some work done, relieving some of the workload from some of the folks who've been wearing multiple hats for multiple months. So that's all I have tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We'll move to item number 5. It's a public hearing on the second reading of Ordinance 1912 LC. I'll let our attorney read the ordinance with his official documentation, and then we'll open it up for the public hearing portion before we have any discussion. Go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you, Mayor. We have on second reading Ordinance 19-12-LC, an ordinance of the City of Destin, Florida, regulating the sale of motor vehicles unless conducted by a business within Okaloosa County, providing for authority, providing for findings of fact, providing for an amendment to Article 7 of the Land Development Code, providing for conflicting provisions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
And Mayor, before we enter the public hearing, I just wanted to note that we are also going to just do a slight tweak to the definition of motor vehicle to clarify that it is intended that trailers are included, because that was the intent.
All right. I'm going to go ahead. Steve, I see that you're on here. You want to wait till after public hearing? Okay. Right now, I'm going to open this up for the public testimony portion of this hearing. Is anyone that would like to step forward and make a comment about this ordinance? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment period on this hearing, and we will start with Mr. Mitchell.
I move to approve ordinance 1912 LC on second reading.
And
Second.
Steve, are you including the amendment suggested by Ms. Kopp?
To include the amendment.
Second. We got a motion, got a second. Any discussion, further discussion on this ordinance? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved. All right, consent agenda.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve A and B.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? Votes unanimous, so moved. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. The only thing I have is over at the old cement plant we purchased. CW did drop off a bulldozer, and I personally pushed all that sand down. It is a beautiful piece of property. But I do need about a 30-yard dumpster over there to put all the pipe and debris that was pushed up. The city manager could kindly get us a dumpster put over there would be greatly appreciated. And can we get some kind of signage, take the no trespassing signs down that are on the entrance and put us something up there that for overflow boat trailer parking at, at the.
Yeah, we'll make that happen, and we'll follow the same guidelines as the other parking lots, right?
Yeah, it's something at the owner's expense, or not owner's expense, but I just don't want somebody coming over there and parking and getting stuck, and then want the city to, pay to get them, tow them out. Yeah, park at your own risk, basically.
And what's the status of the ground there since you pushed it over? Is it sandy? Does it need some gravel or?
Well, they're going to leave us 50 yards of asphalt millings, and there's already probably 15 over there now that I can go push down and flatten it out. And it's, four-wheel drive is no problem, but we're going to be able to park a lot of boat trailers over there once we get it pushed down.
The at your own risk sign would be
Yeah.
probably good. There's usually enough four-wheel drive trucks around to pull somebody out anyways.
Oh, yeah, but then I've talked to a lot of people, and they said, don't try to mark it off, don't try to, stake off parking places, just let us do our thing, and we'll make it work, so, thank you. That's all I have, Mayor.
Ms. Ramswell.
I have a big pot of thank you. I can't think of my brain is shot for some reason, but thank you so much to Michael Burgess, because I had talked to you about the signage going over the Marlar Bridge and the lack of the warning sign that we had been assured by FDOT was going to go up, and he made sure that sucker got up, and it's up. So thank you so very much. I've gotten a lot of folks texting and emailing and calling and saying they've seen it. So time will remain, hopefully it'll have a good effect, but I really appreciate you going above and beyond to make sure that went up. Thank you.
Mr. Mitchell.
Okay, I have a bunch. I'd like to ask, because this is going to go into something I'm going to deal with the city. Mr. Tadlock, can you come up to the podium, please? I wanted him to describe the situation that he emailed us about regarding the navigation issue, and just to kind of briefly brief us, so that way the city manager could address that issue.
Okay, yes, I'd be glad to, but I think Mayor Jarvis is probably as familiar with it, more familiar with it than I am. But for some of you that may not know, as you're leaving East Pass, there's what we call the number one buoy, the C buoy. And before you get to it, on either side of it are two markers, a red and a yellow, and that's the channel that you're supposed to follow. Red and green, I'm sorry. You can tell I'm colorblind. Okay, but that's the channel that you're supposed to.
No wonder you can't follow it.
But and normally it's pretty deep. I mean, when the channel has been dredged, I think it's maybe 10 to 12 feet. But a couple of weeks, and through the last year, you might remember that the Coast Guard took. Mayor Jarvis might have been aboard, but I think Captain Wines were, and I think Matt Gates was. But they went out and they saw that it was about 6 feet, I think, last year. But a couple of weeks ago, I heard on the marine radio that there were some people that were scrubbing the bottom. I eased out there a couple of weeks ago, and I tagged the bottom as well. But in returning, I followed the charter boat back in. But in returning, I made a call to the Coast Guard station to report a mariner's hazard. And interestingly, it was Mobile Sector that answered the call, and this was about 6:30. But that's a pretty good distance for marine radio. And the communications wasn't going to work, so I waited to a little bit later on, and I called Station Destin by cell phone and reported the hazard. But that's pretty much it. I was out there this past weekend. Mayor Jarvis and I chatted a while ago. He was out there as well. And it's pretty serious between those buoys. They're, anybody that draws over 4 feet is probably going to have some problems.
Thank you. I just wanted you to get up because you obviously had sent an email. I know Mayor Jarvis is probably addressing this, but I wanted to get it on a record so that way we could address that with whoever we have to address with, because it obviously is a safety issue.
Yep.
I just want to add one thing to that. I was on that Coast Guard boat when we went out with Matt Gates, and when we was in the channel, we commented on the party boats that was going to the east side, the far east side of that, coming across the bar, because that was the deepest part. And the channel was about the shallow
right now, all the larger boats are having to go anywhere from 100 to 175 yards east of the red can, which is the east. The red can's on the east side of the channel. So nobody's going, none of the charter boats that draw more than 3 feet are using the channel. Unfortunately, most mariners go by the channel markers and some of these bigger 70 Vikings, stuff like that. So guys are scrubbing the bottom. A lot of them don't listen to the Notice to Mariners, and Notice to Mariners has warned people about the shallowness of the channel. Unfortunately, the Coast Guard just can't, just out of its own good gracious, scoot that channel over to the deepest part. They call it local knowledge, and it's also in the Notice to Mariners. So, Guy brought that to my attention. I responded to his email and told him what I had experienced and what everybody's doing at this point. So local knowledge is the way to go. And when our friends are coming into town, just like I do if I'm going to Orange Beach or to Galveston, I always call the local cab and say, any tricks to getting inside? So that's the status right now. And we just got to get that dredge.
Do we have one?
I'll let Kyle weigh in on that.
Yeah, Rodney, the East Pass trial did commence and end last week. Ken Ortell represented us. It did go, from what he tells me, extremely well for us. We do not have a ruling from the administrative law judge at this time. The administrative law process is a little different from regular state court. Typically, it'll take a month, possibly even 2, because you have to go through a written closing argument phase, and you have to draft proposed final judgments that get submitted to both sides. So it takes a little bit longer than usually state court does, but we do anticipate that we will prevail in that, and we have a plan in place that I'll discuss privately with all the council members. So.
But I guess the bottom line is it's more significant proof that the channel needs dredging, and the markers have been relocated in East Pass one time, and they've since been moved a second time, or they drifted. But right now, that channel is not very well marked. And fortunately for me, it was a pretty calm day. But had there been, 2 or 3 foot swells, you could have gotten a pretty good ground. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Guy. Okay, moving along, Mayor. Kind of a common denominator in my next 2 points. That graphic that was just put up about the undergrounding, okay, the priorities, as well as the AT&T thing. I have 20/20 with my glasses, but I still can't read that screen, okay? We need to start getting printouts or have that in our agenda packet, because I can't see that stuff.
Steve, I'll take the responsibility for that. I should have got that out.
Well, not the AT&T thing. He had a whole presentation and we didn't have it. We had 1 page. So again, I'd like to have that. That's number 1. Regarding AT&T, just out of curiosity, did we ask them to come give that briefing, or did they just ask to do it?
Councilman Mitchell, I asked him to come and give that briefing.
That's great. I just didn't know the genesis.
We had been getting quite a few calls with citizens having these little flags in their front yard that were initial locate flags for the placement of these small cells, and I just figured you all would
Fantastic.
appreciate that.
Good, I just didn't understand that. In the last meeting, I requested that we have somebody here from Emerald Grand and FDOT to discuss that article that was in the paper, and that fell through the crack and didn't happen. So I'm going to ask again to have somebody from FDOT, if possible, and the Emerald Grand, so we can go forward with that at the next meeting. I also, at the last meeting, talked about the code enforcement vehicles, and you all briefed me and said that we had some tablets as a beta test, if you will, and whatnot, and had printers. Had the occasion to stop, run into a couple of different code enforcement vehicles in the last 2 weeks. None of them have printers, okay? None of them have printers. I'm a little concerned about that because we were told they did have printers, okay? Obviously, having the printers in the vehicle is going to stop the code enforcement people or code compliance from having to come in the office. The whole idea. I understand they're being beta tested, but it was my understanding they were supposed to have printers.
We have printers in stock. We have a new IT manager that we actually were talking about this with today. So we have that at the top of our list to get implemented. We have all the parts. We just got to get it installed in the actual vehicles.
Okay, so I kind of would like a...
I thought I can't remember if it was you or someone else that said that they were actually in the vehicles.
Did say that.
Joey, we have installed some in the vehicles, correct?
No.
There was one installed and it was in mine. It's the wrong printer. And then they just got the new printers in. They had to go Bluetooth. And then there's an issue with the tablets. I need laptop styles because it's not feasible.
Hopefully the new person who's coming on board can rectify this, because this is another one of the things, like Rodney said, we ask questions, you all give us input, and then to come to find out it's not the same. And obviously, this equipment's necessary so that these guys can do their job. And the last thing I have, I'm looking down my list, I have a request, if you will. Recently came to my attention that Mr. Bailey writes up an action agenda item after each meeting, and I requested that today from Mr. Bailey. I found it extremely useful, and I'm requesting that that be sent to council members when he does that, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it helps us understand what was said. We can also point out possibly some mistakes that were made. If somebody misinterprets what we're asking for, we can get back to you, and that way you're not running down a rabbit hole for nothing. So I would just ask that that action agenda be sent to us upon completion after each council meeting. And that's it, Mayor.
Sir, Mr. Overdeer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Later on this month, I'm going to the Florida League of Cities Annual Conference, and I just need to be, I guess, designated as the voting delegate. And I don't think that needs a motion. I think it's just approval from the council.
Do I see bobbleheads? We'll approve bobbleheads. Everybody bobblehead and approve and Skip as the voting delegate for the annual Florida League of Cities Conference.
I'll see you there.
Okay.
Okay. Way to go, team. Both of you going? Good deal. All right. Mr. Marler.
I'm good tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Destin.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Mr. Morgan.
Lance might need to kind of help me out here for the direction we need to go, but we had at the TPO meeting a couple weeks ago, we were moved from 14th to 3rd on the TPO's list of projects to be funded for the Highway 98 redesign from Airport Road to the Marler Bridge. It's a big project. It'll transform 98. It's going to take a while to get it done, so we were looking at advanced funding, the PD&E study, and that'll move it forward another year or two, which placing us from 14th to 3rd on the list is going to move that forward several more years. And so we've got some momentum going, and we've kind of stumbled, and so we need somebody from the city, preferably an elected representative, to meet with Secretary Gaynor, and just need approval from the city. Yeah. For yourself? No, I think you'll do fine. But yeah, so just, I guess I don't know if we need to motion for council approval to have the mayor,
Let's go ahead and get a motion.
yeah, so I would move to have the city council.
Second.
That'll work. There you go. To have the mayor represent the city, which he does anyways, but on behalf of the city of Destin, to maybe go up there with Lance to try to work things out with FDOT.
Yeah, and what we can do is we'll come up with a formal request and sign up a meeting, and I know Senator Gaines and myself personally, so it should be a good meeting.
And just to clarify, this is just going to be fact-finding for you, and then you bring it back.
To figure out what the city can do to get this advanced funding agreement with.
Yeah, we won't go into any agreement or anything
It'll
like
be
that.
funded in 2020, but the sooner we can get the PD&E, the sooner we get this project going. And what's kind of neat about the project is the first step of replacing the Marler Bridge, so it is a big project.
Yeah, we'll take it as a fact-finding mission. We'll make our desires known, and then we'll come back with you with the report, and then any further direction after we tell you what we know on any subsequent actions that we need to take. Okay, we got a motion, we got a second. Unanimous, so moved.
That's it, thank you.
The only thing I got to do is, I just want to bring up, we've gotten a hard copy of suggestions from the industry on some ideas to consider, maybe of amending the vehicle on the beach ordinance that's in existence. I think the recommended timeline works good too, try to have this done by January 1 so the industry can adjust to it. I think by the time we go through the regulatory process, season's going to be over anyways because of the way the meetings go. It'll be October before any official vote, second reading and that kind of stuff. By putting it on the agenda for our next meeting, they can come back and give public testimony to coincide with the hard copy of their recommendations that we can put in our briefing documents, so we'll be prepared, and then maybe we can get some motions of some language that we'd want to amend the ordinance and then begin that process. Does that sound good with you, Kim?
Yeah, and would you like us to put it in a draft ordinance form for discussion?
Do you guys think that would probably be the most efficient way?
That's what I'm thinking, so, and if you don't like it, we can just make the changes before we start the LPA and official reading process.
Yeah, and by giving us a draft, that gives us, you can give us Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, some options available to us.
Okay.
Okay, so that's the only thing. I'd just like to see it on the next agenda. All right, Mr. Braden.
I just wanted to add to that. It's frustrating to me that these beach vendors have been one of the biggest thorns in our side, in this council side, for years. And with the sheriff's department had to go out there and on multiple times. And we're always getting emails of the chairs in the sand, in the water, on the wet sand. And we've been fighting them and fighting them and fighting them. And all of a sudden they want us to help them. It's going to be real hard for me to do anything for them. I mean, they don't want to help us out. They don't want to, go with the 20-foot, 20 foot from high water, or wet sand, or whatever that the sheriff's department's, and all of a sudden they want our help.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up because that's a discussion I already had with Mr. Metz when it came and says some of the companies are really good. They operate in a consumer-friendly attitude, not only for the people they serve, the properties, but the general public. And then, as Joey and I have discussed, there are a few that there's no other better descriptions. They're turds.
Yeah, they don't do nothing to try to help.
And that's the only four-letter word I can use without being censored, maybe. But in today's world, being nice is not usually on the forefront. And so one of the things I could see that could come out of developing a more clear and concise ordinance is that would put us in a position to do what the county did early before the season and have a special workshop with all the vendors, the ones that are applying for BTRs, and have a little discussion about civility in our community. Because we are the ones that issue the BTRs. So I'm on the same exact page as you. But I don't want to penalize the good operators and the people that are trying to do right and to increase our brand here in Destin by making everybody's experience good. So that puts the businesses that have an ask to us, that we get to reciprocate with an ask to them. If this is what you would like for it to be for you to operate, then what are you going to do for us and our community? So we're on the same page there.
Because I mean, if it was left up to me, I'd just ban all vehicles off the beach whatsoever, because if they've already shown that they're not going to work with us. Yeah. I mean, at all, until we push their hand. And just, now we've made an ordinance and taken vehicles off the the beach, and now all of a sudden they want to work with us.
Sometimes that's what it takes.
Why don't we just make sure that we've got a course of action here, guys. We are going to take all of the information under advisement. Let's set this for an agenda item that we can all have a fresh look at, fresh minds. We're not tired. We haven't antagonized anybody, and we know exactly what we think we should do. It'll give staff an opportunity to draft a potential ordinance, and let's hash it out at the next meeting. I'm concerned we're about to get into a big tit for tat, and I don't think that's going to be real productive this late in the evening.
I agree with you, sir. Well spoken. All right.
The one other thing I'd like staff to consider is that our beach officer, okay, Murray, okay, I would just like him to be in a position to give us some input, okay, because he can give us some timely intelligence on the people that have been good versus the people that have been bad.
There's always two sides to the story, too, isn't there, sir?
Yes.
All right.
Kim, can you address the wording that was unintentionally left out because of the scrivener's error? Y'all want to laugh? But yeah, if you could just address that, and is that something that is a simple fix, or do we need to?
Yeah, it was included specifically in the motion, so because of that, we can just put it in the ordinance because you've already approved it, unless you want to see the whole thing again, but you don't have to. I was just going to fix it per the motion.
So the fact that we approved a second reading when it hadn't been changed isn't a problem?
Well, no, because it should have been in that is the draft that should have had it.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent.
Okay, are we on me?
You're on you.
Okay, so the only thing I have is a Burt Harris litigation update, and this is twofold because we have two separate kind of classes of Burt Harris litigation right now. The first is, this is just to inform you that we've received about 8 Burt Harris pre-suit notices in connection with short-term rental maximum occupancy. So most of those were submitted when I was in Alaska last week. So those are under review, and at an upcoming meeting, my plan is to bring those to you with staff recommendations for whether to enter into a settlement agreement or not. I'm going to have a very short form settlement proposal with staff's recommendations attached, which we had talked about when we did the ordinance, and I had given you samples of those in the agenda package. And at that point, council can decide whether to reject settlement, modify, or approve it. You'd have 150 days to do that from the time that the pre-suit notice was received. And if we reject it or don't settle, then at that point, the property owner would have the option to file an actual complaint, which would be the lawsuit. So as of now, they are not lawsuits, they're just notices and kind of giving us a chance to settle them if we so choose. So there'll be more details on that later. And the second Burt Harris claim that we currently have going on is the Destin fishing fleet claim that you're all aware of. And this is just a status update on that one. We're preparing for depositions this month, and Kyle has the lead on that case, so I would just ask him to give you more detail on the status of that one.
Yeah, we have...
Hold on, before you get started. I do have a question with all these Burt Harris claims.
Yeah.
Bragg, did you put enough in our budget for legal expenses in anticipation in case we do go to court on these? Because we don't have any insurance on these.
Just to clarify, we do have a diminishing policy of $100,000 we're currently using to litigate against the fleet with. Once that policy is used up, though, we will have, it's aggregate, so that will be it.
Is it what is is it like January 1 for 12 months, or is there a fiscal timeline on that?
Yeah, there is a time frame. I don't know it off the top of my head. Karen would probably know.
You do have, I saw there's legal expenditures in the budget.
We have $100,000 for miscellaneous legal representation, but that based on the two cases we got going on right now, that probably won't be enough to include the Bert Harris cases.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Go ahead.
On the fishing fleet Bert Harris claim, we have depositions of the city's corporate representative scheduled for August 13th, which is next Tuesday. We'll be meeting with Lance and Lewis to prepare for that this week. Then on the 27th of August, we have a case management conference with Judge Stone. I anticipate Judge Stone at that time will enter a scheduling order, which will require us to draft and file any dispositive motions we may have. Also set discovery limits and then set a trial date in that case. And if you recall, it's a two-phase trial there. The first phase is actually whether the fishing fleet is entitled to any relief. If they are entitled, then we move on to the damages phase of litigation, and that phase of litigation is to figure out how much they are entitled to. So that's our update.
So is there a point that the judge may just rule they don't have a case at all? Is that the next item?
So we could elect to file a motion for summary judgment on the entitlement issue, and that's part of our legal strategy, so that is a possibility.
Okay, and would that be at the 27th of August or at a later date?
It would not be heard then. Only a case management conference is set for then. If such a motion is filed, then it would be set sometime in September, October. The case management conference, the judge usually simply says, this is your final date to file that dispositive motion. If you don't file it by then, I won't consider it. So.
And so this Bert Harris claim is actually now being moving towards the courts, where the ones we just got, we have an opportunity to settle or
That's
stop
correct, because if you recall, when we discussed possible settlement of the Destin Fishing Fleet's Bert Harris claim, a settlement offer was made, which they rejected. And so since we didn't settle within that 150 days, they went ahead and filed a complaint. Yeah, and in the short-term rentals, those are just in the pre-suit if you want to settle phase.
Yeah, and you and I talked with your friend from Amelia Island, and are you going to go along that route, how they handled it as an example?
Yes, exactly. It was Anna Maria, and those settlement forms were the ones we included in that prior agenda package when we talked about the maximum occupancy limits, and that it's just like a 2-page, very simple, easy to understand form, and I think that's the best route if we decide to settle, to keep that simple and everyone can understand it in the public, and if it doesn't settle, then we proceed to litigate.
And at what point will you have it to where you could explain to us your form?
As soon as I bring it to you. So there was discussion between myself and attorneys for the private property owners that have submitted the notices as to whether to bring them all to council at once or in small groups. So I think it would just be easier probably to bring them all at the same time or in 2 groups, but you'll have them really soon, within the next couple of meetings.
Yeah, I'm asking these questions for y'all's benefit because Kim and I have already spent some time talking with some other communities that have had to deal with this. So I just wanted to get it on the public record, and then she'll come back to us to explain it all, give us our options so we can make decisions at that point.
I got a question for Kim. Is there a point in time that if the fishing fleet loses, that they would be responsible for paying the city's attorney fees?
That could certainly happen, yes. Kyle, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, so when we sent them the settlement offer, we triggered the attorney's fee provision in the statute when they declined it. So if we do prevail in the litigation and the judge finds we made that offer in good faith, then we will be awarded attorney's fees.
Perfect, thank you.
Mr. Destin.
Given that not all Bert Harris Act claims may have they're not all created equal. Some will be more advantageous to the claimant than to ourselves. Some will make more sense to settle out early than others. There will be a portion that would make sense to have to litigate. From a defensive standpoint, is there any wisdom and benefit to having sort of the expert economic analysis to back up our positions that, listen, the other side says that they were damaged to X degree, whereas we have a counter expert or basically data that we're relying upon that says not actually were they not harmed, they actually, all short-term rentals or all buildings that could have built higher are now actually worth a little bit more because we have brought levels down. We have brought down the amount of short-term rentals. They are more valuable now through the economic theory of supply and demand. Is there benefit to having a study like that to rely upon as we go forward with some of these that we do have to litigate?
Sure, and I mean, if the council wants us to go ahead and try to secure someone to do a study like that, we'd be happy to.
Just wait and see what she comes up with first.
Well, what I might suggest is, with a limited amount of your time, can you pursue getting a handful of proposals of the type of people, because this is not a huge universe of folks in Florida that probably do these types of studies. Could you come back to council at some point with some proposals that we might explore?
Sure.
Okay.
Good idea, Mr. Destin. Thank you. Other than that? Oh, yeah, public comment. Anybody else want to say something? Marcy Bell. I forget your address, otherwise I put it on a public record for you. Somewhere on Holiday Isle.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. Remember that next time, sir, so I don't have to repeat it.
Email me.
Okay, so I just want to, I know this doesn't, it falls within the city limits, but I know it's not a city park. Michael and I spoke about it the other day. James Lee Park. Oh my goodness. I spent 2 hours over there the other day. Had a citizen contact me. I went and walked that thing. 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. It's disgusting. That's the only word I can use for it. The bathrooms are disgusting. They're keeping babies' high chairs in the men's room. It's falling apart. There's rusted nails and screws. And most of that is either at a handrail that somebody's going to grab to go down for support. There's no ADA ramp there, so that's going to be somebody that's looking for some stability. The other ones where the problems are at the height of small children that are grabbing, and if you haven't seen it, go take a look. You don't have to take 2 hours like I did because I was documenting it. It's across the street from Destiny. What a terrible welcome for our visitors to our area in a park that they think is supposed to represent Destin. So I would hope that somebody would look into that further than just my blog where I blog about it. Thanks.
You ought to give that same testimony at the next Okaloosa County Commission meeting. Or TDC.
You know, I had spoken to someone, and I'm not sure who it was, but, you know, when we had Sandman cleaning the beaches here, he was cleaning them daily. And then when the county took over, it dropped to, I believe, about 3 times a week. And from what I understand now, they're raking the beach. As of like last week, it had been raked 7 times this whole summer. So I went on my tangent a year or 2 ago where, you know, I had people tracking and sending me, today it was done, today it was not done, not done, not done, here they were, and I presented that. And I was assured by the county that they were going to step up and do it. I've let it go for a full year now, and it's worse than ever. I've heard trash is better, but the raking is disgrace.
Well, you got 2 members of the TDC board right here, so I'm sure that message is going to be delivered quickly with our own councilman member Destin and Mr. Ken right here. Come on up.
Mayor, while Ken's coming up, interesting note that City was offered that park late 80s, early 90s, and previous councils turned it down. We should have went the other way.
Just one other thing, Mayor. Sorry, sir. I want to just echo what Ms. Bell said, and I'll take issue with what she said. She didn't stress it enough. It's beyond deplorable, okay? She said it was bad. She didn't stress enough how bad it is, okay? I can tell you that in Public Works and Public Safety, almost monthly, we would discuss that. The parking lots, the lights are out almost all the time. I know the county's addressing that right now, okay? Joe Bodie used to laugh because we would complain to them about their grass, and then they'd come in and basically level the grass and take it out of spite, okay? Their contract clearly states that they're supposed to clean that park, okay? They used to come out at 7 o'clock in the morning, a guy with a blower, and be blowing the parking lot. That hadn't been done in years. So I don't know, again, TDC, but we might try to send something, or somebody from staff contact Kelly Wines, or get somebody to try to help us. Again, it's not the city.
Lance, we can just draft up a letter with our concerns. I think that would be a start.
Absolutely.
Okay?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Ken Wampler, 310 Lower IP Loop, Twin Lakes. So I can verify what she was saying. I get woke up in the middle of the night, so thank you for taking the responsible actions on that. But y'all did a lot of great things tonight, but one thing that happened tonight that took me by surprise, and I discussed it with Lance, is that you approved a fee schedule that wasn't published. The fee schedule that's currently on the website doesn't have anything to do with changing the short-term vacation rental registration fee. It was nowhere to be found. So clearly, it caught my attention, and I would remind the council that 3 years ago, that registration fee was $50, and what you did tonight was raise the lowest to $500 from $200. So that's the kind of thing that I don't think you all need to have to justify why you did what you did, but it's going to be perceived because in reality, no one had that information before Lance read it at tonight's meeting, and I'm not sure that's how you want to govern, or at least be viewed as governing the city, because clearly that, as Mr. Morgan would say, that's taxation. And at the end of the day, I think we want to do what's best for the community, and communicating what the fee schedule is a pretty critical part, and to for whatever reason, have that not included in the packet that was published and is online tonight, I think is misleading, and I would ask you that maybe you need to look into communicating those things better. So thank you for the appointment with short-term vacation rental. Obviously, my mission as a resident of Destin is to make sure we're operating the short-term vacation rental business responsibly so that everybody can enjoy peaceful enjoyment of their real estate. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Mr. Tadlock, come on up.
Guy Tadlock, 502 Noriega. Speaking of parks, a couple of 3 weeks ago, that workshop that we had where we discussed the Crosstown Connector, there was a gentleman that said no more parks. I struck up a conversation with him a little bit later on, and he kind of mentioned the same thing that Ms. Bell did. I don't think he understood that that park was actually in the county. But having said that, a park that I think is very important to the people that visit Destin, not only the locals, but our tourists as well. And I hope I got the name of this right, being I got the red and green mixed up. But, the park on Calhoun, I think it's Clement Taylor Park, beautiful park. And we encourage a lot of people that if the Gulf is rough, you know, if you got young kids, that's a good place to go. Water's beautiful, especially on an incoming tide. But it's been down for quite a while, and I know that there's some grant money planned to do some significant work. But I just wonder what the schedule of that is, and if that park could get back into service. Could anybody help me on that?
I can tell you that the Hurricane Michael did the damage to the seawall
I'm aware of that, yes.
and to the gazebo, and so it's running through the FEMA process, which is painfully slow. And like the previous grant we discussed, we could proceed ahead if council wanted to foot the bill. But until they give their final approval, we're operating on our own. If we go ahead and operate, then we're going to pick up the tab. If we wait for their final approval, then they're going to pick up the tab. So I know it's not great, and I don't like seeing it any more than anyone out there in the public. That's my favorite park in town, personally. and I want it fixed as badly as anyone. And I can tell you that the last time that I spoke with the person coordinating this for the city, which is Lorraine, that we had passed the last test with FEMA, and that we should be at the point now where we're getting the contractor on site.
So, round numbers, is there a timeline on how much longer to be down? I mean, are we talking about months, weeks, months, years?
I hate to say this, but probably we will get that up and running just in time for the federal grant to come through, where we tear everything back up and replace everything. So, but the seawall, hopefully within 3 months is what we're looking at. The federal grant through the Treasury is in the same shape as the one for the one on the harbor, for the park on the harbor.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Seeing any further comment, Bill? Dang it. Oh, I missed. Come on up.
Don't you move, Claude. I still want to hear from you.
Go ahead, sir.
I just wanted to mention to you all that, like the other gentleman that was up here, I think it's 1,000% mandatory that you disclose to people when you're going to do things like change fees dramatically, okay? And I was on the website today. It's not there. It's not here, okay? And I've already had 2 texts about it from people that own short-term rentals that know that I come to this meeting, okay? So I don't know how you do that, but when you're going to do things like that, disclosure is what it's all about, because you know you're going to get some pushback on it. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Bill. Anyone else? Seeing none? Meeting adjourned.